And the topic that we are discussing is the kosher way of rebuking or admonishment, admonishing someone properly, respectfully. And I will tell you what it has to do with this week, but I want to first share with you what this Parsha talks about so we can put it all in context. This week we begin Parshat Devarim. Chumash Devarim is the book of the Devarim, chapter 1, verse 1, which is the fifth book of the Chamisha Chumshei Torah, 5 books of Moses. There is a date in this week's Parsha which tells us when was this Parsha said. We know that some Parshiyot, we have the date when it was said, and there are some portions in the Torah which we don't have the date. We know it took some time between the beginning of creation for 3,328 years, which is the Exodus. And then, I'm sorry, 2,448 years from creation is when the Exodus took place. And then we have another 40 years, which closes this book, the passing of Moses. And in between happened the story of Bereshis and Noah and Lech Lecha and Shmot and Vayikra. This last book, which is a full book, was given and said by Moses not more than 5 weeks before he passed away. As the Torah begins on verse 3, Vayehi be'arba'im shana, and it happened that at the 40th year, which is the 40th year since the Exodus, be'ashtei asar chodesh, in the 11th month, which the 11 months in the Torah is started to be counted from Nisan. The 11th month is the chodesh which we call today Shvat, but in the Torah there is no names for months yet, only numbers. Ve'echad lachodesh, and the first of the month is Dibr Moshe bnei Yisrael kechoel asher tzivo Hashem Moshe aleim. So Moshe spoke to the Bnei Israel, to the children of Israel, which this is now shortly before his passing, and he spoke to them about everything that God had commanded them on their behalf. This is what this entire book is going to be. It's a book which shares words for Moshe of the last month plus a week of his life, because Moshe passed away the 7th day of the 12th month, 7th of Adar. And now we are on the first day of the 11th month, which is the first of Shvat. In general, this book is called Mishneh Torah. As I mentioned last week in class, Mishneh comes from the word repeating what the Torah is sharing with us, because this book is in essence a repetition of what was said earlier. But while Moshe is repeating to us that which he shared with us in the last 40 years, he is also, so to speak, editing, putting together information and word, sometimes even wording slightly different, certain commandments which was given to him, to us by him in the last 40 years. So for example, if you are going to read in a week from now, not this week, but next week, you are going to read the famous 10 Commandments. When Moshe repeats to us what God told him at Sinai, you're going to see that some words are different. Some slightly, some a little more than slightly, than the way we have the original 10 Commandments in the book of Shemot. Classic example is the 4th commandment. While in the book of Shemot it says, Zachor et Yom HaShabbat lekadsho, remember the day of Shabbos to make it holy. The commandment to keep Shabbat is written with the order of Zachor, remember. In this book, when he repeats it, he uses a different word. He doesn't say Zachor. He says Shamor et Yom HaShabbat. You should guard the day of Shabbos to make it holy. And when you wonder, so what did he say? What did God say? Did God say Zachor or God say Shamor? You know? You want to know? I mean, seemingly you say one thing. You cannot say 2 words simultaneously. You can say 2 words, one after another, but not simultaneously to say one word and you can hear a second word while the first word is being recited. Comes the song that we all sing in every Jewish community on Friday night. And how does it go? Zachor v'shamor b'dibur echad, ishmi'anu kelam yuchad. Which means, Zachor and Shamor b'dibur echad was simultaneously said in the same order, in the same breath, in the same ordinance, right? And how is it possible? Kelam yuchad. This is our very significant and unique God that he can say one word. The Bible says it. He says a second word. And Moshe tells us the first word in the first order of commandment, and he tells us the second word and he repeats it. And so on. There's a lot of insight which in the Talmud and the Medrash. There's some additional commandments too in this book. You're going to have, for example, the very famous commandment which we call benching, or grace after meal, Birkat HaMazon, is going to be in this book of Devarim. The commandment of appointing a king is going to be in this book, the book of the Devarim. Moshe was still updating the congregation with the ordinances which he was given by God to add the 40 years or at the 40th year. But at the same time, in general, this book is called Mishnah Torah, a repetition of Torah. But the way Moshe begins is seemingly, and I'm using the word seemingly, the Torah begins by telling us seemingly where Moshe spoke those commandments, the geographical location, where we're standing now. So verse 1 begins as follows. Eile advarim, these are the words, Asher diber Moshe el kol Yisrael, which Moses spoke to all Israel, to all the Jewish people, where? Be'ever Ayarden. Literally translate, where is he standing? At the bank of the Jordan. Bamidbar, in the wilderness. Bo'arava, in the plains. Molsuv, at the Sea of Reeds. Bein Paran u Bein Tofel, somewhere between Paran and Tofel. Velavan, and Lavan. Vachatzerois, and Chatzerois. Vedizav, and Dizav. Achad Asar Yom, that place which he is standing is apparently 11 days from where? Mechorev. What is Chorev? Matzah. So it's 11 days travel from Chorev. This is the 40th year, right? Derech Har Seir, through the mountain of Seir, at Kadesh Barnea, until Kadesh Barnea will take 11 days. This type of description obviously does not make any sense. First of all, as Rashi points out, there is no place called Dizav, and there is no place called Lavan. And what are those locations? If we don't even know where they are and what they are, so what does that mean? And here Rashi comes and he brings us from the Medrash and from the Talmud a very profound insight in the simple understanding of this verse. That these locations are apparently a part of an introduction to how Moshe is now beginning his conversation with the Jewish people. And he wants to actually rebuke them or admonishing them for the past 40 years. And instead of telling them how things were and what they did at those places, how wrongly they behaved, instead it's just giving them seemingly geographical locations, as if to say, this is the place of the name of the place, now figure out what am I alluding to. Think to yourself, what actually happened on that place? And if there is no place with that name, so try to think, what is that name, again, alluding to, and figure out what I mean by telling you and mentioning to you such names and such locations. And Rashi goes through one by one, describing to us what happened in a place called Midbar, what happened in Arava, what happened at Mol Suv, what happened in Lavan, what happened Chatzerot, what happened in Nizav. And I'm going to be brief so we can all get into what I would like to discuss and learn tonight in the short time that we are here. So Rashi says as follows. Number one, when Moshe says, Bamidbar, where are we standing actually? This actual location is as the verse begins, Be'ever HaYarden. Moshe is speaking to the people at the east bank of the Jordan. As we all know, we actually studied it last week. This is where we just arrived, the 42nd location of the journey is across of the Jordan River on the eastern side, which is facing Jericho on the western side. So we simply have to cross the river in order to get into Eretz Israel, while Jericho being the manul, the key opening to the land. This was last week. And now, he talks to them. And he says, Bamidbar, the desert. What happened in the desert? So we all knew what happened in the desert, right? When they were in the desert, Moshe says, he rebukes them for angering God in the desert, when they said, and he goes back to a verse in Chumash Shmot, when they said, if only we had died by the hand of God in the land of Egypt, rather than being here on our way to Eretz Israel. So Moshe is reminding them. Remember, God was upset when you used these words after showing you all the miracles, and when things weren't exactly, so to speak, as the comfort of Egypt, and you said, ugh, would have rather die in Egypt than being here. I'm just reminding you. This is the word Bamidbar. Then the second word is Ba'arava. Ba'arava is in the plains, Arava, which is the plains of Moab. Arvot Moab is it called in the Torah. What happened in the place of Moab? This is the scene of Baal Peor, a Chittim, which was discussed a couple of weeks ago in Chumash Bamidbar. Mol Suv, at the Sea of Reeds, there it reminds them the rebellions at the Red Sea again, when they said, let's go back to Egypt, let us appoint a leader. Then they gave up hope, and they said, this is too scary. Why did we follow Moshe? Bein Paran, what is Paran? The desert of Paran is where the spies were sent from, Midbar Paran. So he reminds them the scene of the spies, which took place almost 40 years earlier, coming back with a report of discouragement, not even to try to make it to Israel, it's not going to work. And Tofel and Lavan. And as Rashi says, Rabbi Yochanan says, we have searched the entire Torah against the map, and we have found no place named Tofel or Lavan. Rather, this means that Moshe rebukes them because of the foolish things. Tofel in Hebrew means tafel, foolish, tfelut. What foolish thing? This is the foolish thing is about what they said regarding the man, which was Lavan, which was white. When they said, we are sick and tired of this man. So Tofel velavan is one word. Then they describe that color white, which is Lavan, referring to the man, which is described by the Torah, Vehu Kizra Gad Lavan. So they were complaining that this Lavan is really, we are sick and tired and we are bored of this tasteless, same type of food with no feel of proper nourishment by you know. We all know the philosophy of colors in food is very important, right? You can have very little, but when it has different colors, you feel like you had a better meal. But here, every day was the same white food. And it looked the same and so on. So this is Tofel Lavan. Chatzirot. Chatzirot is here the rebuke regarding the story of Korach, which was in Chatzirot. Di Za'av is obviously the word Za'av means gold, and he rebuked them for the golden calf they made as a result of their abundance of gold. You have too much gold, so what did you do? Next thing you went and you made yourself a golden calf. So Moshe doesn't even mention any of those so-called scenes in words. He only alludes to them by using locations or different so-called code words, which hopefully they will realize what he means by that. And this is his rebuke. Eile Devarim, these are the words, our sages tell us, these are the words of rebuke that Moshe is now rebuking the Jewish people. And actually, when he goes further, he does mention a little bit, you know, the story of the spies, the way they asked them, a few things he does mention, but in general, he is not getting into specifically discussing what and how. Matter of fact, Moshe is not the first one who rebukes people like that. Anyone who remembers going back to the story of Yaakov before he died, and he gave Reuven of being the first and the oldest child, so he calls all the 12 children to him, and he's supposed to give him the so-called the blessings, right? But if you read the blessings, there's a lot of rebuke and admonishment too, when he mentions to them different behaviors which he didn't approve. So when it comes to Reuven, he says, Reuven, Bechori ata, you are my firstborn, Kochi, you are my strength, and so on. And then he says, Pachas kamayim al tota ki alita mishkevei avicha. He says something about you are like running water, meaning that you rushed. Alita mishkevei avicha, when you interfered with your father's bed. Now, if you don't know this story, you don't know this story, because he's not going to tell you what happened on the father's bed. But if you read Rashi, and anyone who knows Ilya, what happened when Reuben walked out and he exchanged the father's bed for the flowers and so on. So you know there was a story. But Yaakov doesn't go into the story. He just says, remember the story with the bed? And I understand why you did it, because pachas kamayim, you were like the type of boy that you kept on rushing my water, you had no patience, right? But because of that, I just want to remind you that this is not the way we behave. It's not only how they speak, it's also when they speak. It's very difficult when you rebuke someone and the person who was rebuked by you has to see you for the next 40, 50, 60, 70 years. And he constantly remembers every time he sees you, oh, here's the guy who knows my real story, and he even gave me a big mishabera for what I did. Which is much different when Yaakov is just about to say goodbye to his children who's never going to see them again. So they're not going to have any hard feelings knowing that their father keeps so-called a grudge or remembers what they did. And same thing with Moshe. Moshe is saying it at the last month before he died. It's not going to happen again. He's not going to see them. So they are going to be able to walk around comfortably knowing that they need to improve themselves and they have to repent on what they did. But the rebuker is not there, facing them on a day-to-day. Wanted to comment last?
I mean, it goes further. Even Hashem saying to Cain, "Where's your brother?" Right? The most indirect in the second Parsha. But I'm just, because I know you're in this direction. Is the underlying point here that it's a psychological imperative or a moral imperative? In other words, are all these indirect rebukes driven by the psychology of being more effective in having a person realize the problem they've made, or is there a moral imperative that is should an indirect method
right? It's a good question, and if we're going to see now, we're going to see in a moment how rebuke is meant to be halachically, so you would realize that they're actually both. There is a psychological approach that we realize that the way you will take it seriously is probably not by hearing direct words, but being brought up to it. And at the same time, there's obviously the moral factor, which I assume that's what you're referring to, is the lack of embarrassment, which the one being rebuked is now experiencing while he was rebuked in this indirect way, rather than being told, this is what happened, and this is obviously the moral. I assume that's what you refer to. But we will come to the halacha in a moment. I want to still establish what and how the Torah looks at it, on this idea of rebuke. Even Yosef, when Yosef meets his brothers, he doesn't rebuke them on what happened. He keeps on going around the bush, so to speak. And he wants them to understand and realizing themselves what kind of behavior and what kind of impact their behavior had. There is basically, generally, in rebuke, when you talk about rebuke in general, from a philosophical point of view, what is the purpose of rebuke? What is the best way of rebuking someone? So there is people which feel very accomplished by rebuking someone just by behaving properly in face of the person who wronged them. It's called, in English there's an expression like kill him with love or something like that. Basically, or actions speaks more than 1,000 words. You did something to me, you wronged me, obviously it wasn't right, and I didn't deserve it. But instead of me getting involved and trying to pay you back the consequences, what you deserve for your behavior, I'm just going to shower you with so much more love and keep on giving you more and more, and as if you never wronged me, and the person who wronged you is standing before you or in your presence, or hears about it, and it hits him up like, what happened to me? Look at this guy, he's so nice and he's so giving. After all that I did to him, It, drives him to sugar. It makes me crazy. How did I wrong this person? What was wrong with me? And basically, it's a common phenomenon in general family life, community life, that you can revenge someone in a sense by just behaving very nice to them. But I'm not talking about, God forbid, revenging someone or behaving nicely with the purpose of revenge. But I'm talking more in the fact that we all know that there are people that just by being in their presence or reading about them or hearing about them, you feel that you want to become better. If he can do it, maybe I can do it too. Or when you look at them and you see the way they study, the way they behave, the way they conduct themselves, you say, wow, if only, why am I here and he is there? Let me try to imitate him. Let me try to get to his level. So he keeps on rebuking you just by being an example, just by behaving. And then there is the rebuke, which is with words. Yes, with words, perhaps are harsher. You tell them, and you say it the way you can say it, strongly and harshly, and the person walks away, sometimes shattered by the words he just heard, realizing what he is wrong, and it can have an impact on them. The words can be carried, not today, tomorrow, in a week from now. It might cause them to change. And there's an ongoing debate, philosophically, what's the proper way of rebuking? Whether, serve as an example, let them realize by your action that this is not the way to behave, or by actually speaking to them and mentioning it and admonishing them and so on. But the one thing, as we see here by Moshe, even though he used words, despite the fact that he was a great example, but at the same time, the words he used was clearly not words which would in any way offend them or bring out any trait of embarrassment. We have a mitzvah in the Torah. There's a mitzvah. The mitzvah is mentioned in Parshat Kedoshim, in the book of Leviticus, Vayikra, Parshat Kedoshim. Everybody knows one part of that pasuk, which is very common and it's almost like a slogan. Ve'ahavta l'recha kamoch. Love your fellow as yourself. But there's another part to that verse. And one of the parts is, Ocheach tochiach et amitecha. You should surely admonish your colleague. In simple English, tell him off. In most cases, people put the mitzvah of admonishment in the context of so-called a religious duty. Which I mean in the context of religion, that when you see someone doing the wrong things in the eyes of God, don't remain silent. You have a mitzvah to demonstrate and rebuking and saying, how come you're doing it? But that's not the only part of the mitzvah. Matter of fact, the Rambam, when he discusses this mitzvah in Ilchot Deot, in the laws which he discusses character development, writes as follows. This is his words. Kesheyechta Adam leish. When one wrongs another, lo yistemenu veishtok. The one who was wronged should not remain silent and be quiet about it. Ela yodio lechavero. He should tell his friend, kach v'kach asita li. So did you do to me. And why did you do it? And the Rambam says that those who remain silent and don't admonish their friend for wronging them, they are violating the commandment which says, Ocheach tochiach et amitecha. And he says even more, that this is one of the only places the Rambam goes in Halacha, goes out so strong and clear, and says that keeping silent about someone who wronged you is called Derech HaReshaim. This is the way of the wicked people. He says wicked people, and he brings some proof from Tanakh. He brings the story of Doeg the Adoimite. He brings some stories as proof to support this halachic approach in admonishment, that halachically you're expected to make your feelings heard by the person who wronged you, and ask him, Lama, why are you doing it to me? What's the purpose? Why make a big deal? Let's look away. You know what? Maybe I'm going to go sleep today, tomorrow. He will forget about it. I will forget about it. Is it so important to bring it out? Everything has to be discussed. I mean, a bunch of, is that like, what do you call those meetings that people come and talk about their problems?
Group therapy.
Is it like
Group therapy. Yeah,
Is Torah so encouraging group therapy that we should all sit and talk, my problem and this problem, and it becomes like a way of good feeling. Yes. Yes. Rambam says by holding it in and not making a issue about it, not mentioning it, it becomes worse. He goes with the order of the verse. The verse says, admonish your friend, do not hate your brother in your heart, love your fellow as yourself. And this is a very specific order. By not admonishing, you're going to end up hating him in your heart more than you think. But you brought it out many times. Sometimes for sure, I think many times. This is based on my very small experience in life. Many times, by bringing it out and asking why you wronged me, you were going to learn that he never wronged you. He never thought of wronging you. You walk around, comes Shabbos after services, and I walk by Mr. So-and-so on my way to Kiddush. And I say, Good Shabbos, no response. No response. Okay, no response. I'm going into Kiddush, and now my kishkas are turning. Why is he not saying Good Shabbos to me? What did I do to him? He probably thinks when you're starting already, the imagination starts working and working. And if you're good in math, you start making all kinds of calculations. Why that Good Shabbos was not said. And it keeps on building and building. By next week, you don't tell him Good Shabbos. By the third week, a couple of months, at that point, you're off my list, deleted from any text group, WhatsApp group, email group. I'm making a simcha, you're not invited. What do you mean? He didn't say Good Shabbos. I know already why. It's his wife, it's his mother-in-law. You have the whole story. However, take a different scenario. I was walked by, he did not say Good Shabbos to me, I'm very upset, he has something against me, I go into Kiddush, and just before I see him leaving Kiddush, I go over to him, and I get up from my chair and I says, Mr. John, I just want to I hear that you don't say Good Shabbos to me. Is everything okay between us? I mean, what's the problem? Why? I didn't see when. What are you talking about? Yes, you walked by Shul. I was standing right there. You walked by. I said Good Shabbos. You didn't answer. He said you walked by. I was so spaced out at that moment. Or actually, I was still diving. I didn't realize you. I was looking on the race, on the rain outside. I was thinking, how am I going to walk home? It's raining, it's too hot, it's too cold. Sorry, I didn't meant you. Good Shabbos, here, take a hug, take 3 Good Shabboses. Hakol nigmar, that's it. Case closed. What happened? It simply did what the Rambam tells you to do, what he says that the Torah wants you to do. Ocheach tochiach et amitecha. Get up and admonish him. Why are you wronging me? By not doing it, you're ending up with a growing, I don't want to use a bad word, but we know what kind of sickness it is when something starts growing inside. And it grows, for what? Because you let it grow. The Medrash says that this upcoming holiday, to be God willing, Mashiach will come, Tisha B'Av, the 9th of Av, we are all going to mourn the next Saturday night, 24 hours, we're going to stay away from food, from drink. It's not going to be easy, it's a long Sunday. Especially Sunday is sometimes harder than fasting than Monday. Because you're coming off a nice Shabbos, and we ate and we drank. And the change from a Shabbos atmosphere, it will be maybe hot, who knows? It is, you're planning already.
It's going to be in the 80s, I hear.
Oh, it's fine.
Mid-80s.
And it's going to be what's going to be, but we're all going to fast, and we're going to sit on the floor, and we're not going to wear leather shoes, and we're going to mourn the destruction of the Beis HaMikdash. And I'm sure that at some point or another, we're going to ask ourselves, so why Taka? Lama, why was the temple destroyed? And we're going to have to go back to the Talmudic sources, to the Midrashic sources, and find what was the reason. Why is it important to find the reason? Because if we know the reason, so perhaps we can try to repair it, that hopefully it shouldn't happen again. And the temple should be again rebuilt by the coming of Mashiach. So then we're looking into the Talmud, and we know there's this story of, classic story which is being discussed every year, Kamsa and Bar Kamsa. Talmudic story of a man who had two neighbors, who one was name was Kamsa, who he liked, and the other one was Bar Kamsa, which he actually hated. And by mistake, an invitation arrived to Bar Kamsa's house for a banquet that this neighbor was doing. I was forced to go to Kamsa. The mailman saw Kamsa, Bar Kamsa, all those names looked at me, Mr. Cohen, who knows? Didn't put the extra attention to the word bar. And Mr. Bar Kamsa gets an invitation, and in his mind, Givaldik, looks like my neighbor is trying to make up with me. He's inviting me to the banquet, to the wedding. And when he comes in there, and the neighbor sees them and says, what the heck are you doing here? I never invited you, get out of here. What do you mean, I got an invitation? I didn't mean you, I meant Kamsa, get out. The Talmud discusses in detail the conversation which took place between the host of the Simcha and Bar Kamsa. Bar Kamsa left. And that was the beginning of the end, because he went to the government and he gave over some information about the Jews, which literally led to the destruction of the temple. You all know the story. And every year we read the story. But the Medrash says the story is not about the issue with Bar Kamsa had with that host. It wasn't even the hatred of these two Jews hating each other, which finally God said, if that's how they behave, maybe they don't deserve the temple. The Medrash says that the real issue in that story was that people were there at the banquet and they realized what's happening, and no one went over to the host admonishing him for his behavior. Pretend I didn't see. But after all, I'm a guest. At least let me stay in the Simcha, we're looking forward to this celebration. You came dressed up with your rebbetzim, with your husband, you want to have a good time. What am I going to involve in someone else's business? You were quiet. That was wrong. It's Takei Simcha. But someone should have gone over to that host and asked, throwing someone out? Maybe I can help. Are you guys okay? Find out. And the Medrash uses the word Lo Charva Yerushalayim אלא בשביל שלא הוכיחו זה את זה. Jerusalem was destroyed because they did not admonish each other. Obviously, this is a classic admonishment for someone behaving wrongly towards somebody else. But as we saw by the Rambam, it clearly includes not able to admonish each other for being wronged by someone. What do you want? People are locked up in their cubicles and they go around eating their hearts out for the fact that somebody did not invite them, did not say hello to them, didn't include them, said something, negatively about them. Figure out, maybe the person wronged you and there's a way to do it. Now, how should you admonish? So the Rambam makes very clear. Admonishment has to first be private. No one else has to know that this guy wronged you. And the Rambam says that the fact that the verse continues, the fourth part in that verse is, do not carry any sin because of it. So usually we read that verse, which it means to say, do not carry the sin for hating someone. Lo tisa alav chet. Says the Rambam, no. The verse is again a further reference in the context of admonishment. When you shall admonish someone, make sure that you admonish him in a way that the admonishment is not causing you to sin while you admonish. What can admonishment carry sin? When the person who you are admonishing will not get embarrassed by the way you admonish them. That embarrassment becomes a sin for the admonisher. Lo tisa alav chet. So it has to be done in private. Yes, I can get up here in class and say, hey, you, Mr. So-and-so, because I'm trying to religiously fulfill the mitzvah of admonishment. I say, hey, how come you called me mamzel yesterday? I said mamzel to you? I wasn't talking to you. I was talking to my brother, and you happened to walk by this. You thought I was speaking to you. Okay, whatever it was. There was a great Hasidic master. From the early Hasidic masters, his name was Rabbi Zusha of Amipoli. He was from the students of the Maggid of the Rich. A very sweet Rebbe. And they say that the way Rabbi Zusha had a problem. The problem was that he was able to see on people's faces and on their foreheads to read how they behaved last night and the day before yesterday. You see someone, that person doesn't tell you what he did and nobody else knows, but you see it and you have to tell them. But when you're going to tell them, that's going to be a very great source of embarrassment. So the way he used to do it, the Hasidic story says he used to go by next to that person. And Zusha was talking to himself. Oi, Zusha, what's going to be with you? Why did you have to do it last night? Dear, what happened to you? You couldn't control yourself. You had to go, and you had to scream on your wife, and you had to embarrass your husband. He kept on using words, talking about himself, and crying about it. He really trying to awaken a spirit of remorse and regret. And the person sitting next to them starts crying along with them because he feels, okay, this man is crying about what he did. I actually did the very same thing. So the way he admonished people and he caused them to improve was in a sense of, speaking to himself, and that's how he had him, what's it called? He had him realize that he need to improve himself. This is all information and ideas that I'm sure we learn, and it's good to review the Shabbos of Tisha B'Av. But I learned a further insight, which I did not learn until this year, even though it's not new. It was printed and written and said by the Rabbi in 1971, and it was printed, and I should have known about it till now, but I'm very happy to share that I did not know. So I'm going to share it with you tonight from a talk of the Rabbi, which is printed in the 14th volume of Likutei Sichot. And the Rebbe discusses this admonishment of Moshe. And the Rebbe said that what's so interesting and unique about this admonishment is not only the fact that he's able to cover up the stories by just using references to locations, in the meantime teaching us, how respectfully you have to be while you admonish. The Rebbe says, if you look into Moshe's words, the very same words which serves as admonishment, he's at the same time advocating for them too. A whole different level. You admonish them, and at the same time, you're advocating, you putting in the word something which can be used as a reason and explanation, helping you perhaps understand why did you stumble in that matter, and give you the good feeling that it's not even your fault 100%, and maybe I should change and become a better person, realizing that it wasn't even me. And look at the Rebbe says it. Let's go back to the five locations, so to speak, that Moshe mentions. Bamidbar. Bamidbar, we said, is the desert. And Rashi explains, this is referring to the fact that they said that they angered God by saying we should have died in the desert. Moshe doesn't say where it happened. He only says Bamidbar. You can understand somebody saying, I should have rather died in Egypt, but amongst people in the city, than being isolated here in the Midbar. So the very time he's using rebuke is giving them also some insight of adversary, advocating for them why they came with such a claim while being where they were, as if, so to speak, you have to repent on what you did, but you, God, just remember it happened in the desert, right? You can't have 100% kindness complaints against them. They were in a very scary place. The second place, anyone remembers when and why was Moab given the name Moab?
The daughter of Lot.
That's right. Lot's daughter had a relationship with her father after Sodom and Gomorrah was turned over, right? And when she gave birth to the child from that relationship, she said Moab, meaning in Hebrew, Me'av. This child came from my father. This is obviously a very bad story of completely lack of modesty, etc. So coming to a place of Shittim, which was in Arvat Moab, a place they rebelled at standing facing the sea. So Rashi says, what do you want from them? Moshe says, you know where they're standing? Facing the sea. They were nowhere to go. They had nowhere to go. Naturally, there was no way of rescue. The sea is in front of them. Egypt is behind them. So when they say, hey, weren't there any graves in Egypt that you schlepped us out all the way here? What else should they say? Yes, they should not, because you expect from them emunah, believe, you want them to be a little stronger. But at the same time, just remember the location. So on Lavan, I'm just going to finish up. The last one, Diza'av, is referring to the golden calf. And Moshe says, God, they sinned with the golden calf, not because they wanted to sin. You, God, gave them and gave them. You gave them so much gold and so much money and so much wealth. So what do you want? You spoil them. So again, God, you're on full tool, so to speak. So basically, this is the point. The fact that he's hiding the scene and not specifying it, this is a message which is being discussed, and this is a way, as we explained, is in the context of Adman. Before Tisha B'Av, Eicha Yoshva Badad, you're going to see it on the floor and talk about, what happened to us, and we were exiled, and so on and on and on. At the same time, what is the attitude? The attitude has to be, at least every person regarding the next person. For ourselves, we can always behave better. But talking about and thinking about others is to realize that admonishment has to be respectfully, and at the same time, you should also find a way to advocate while you admonish. And if you can't, so don't admonish. Moshe waited 40 years. So wait. Wait. While you're admonishing, try to also, what is the word in Pirkei Avot? Try to find any way of advocating why did it. Maybe there's a reason. Maybe they think that they have a reason. Maybe they think, but don't hold it in your kishkes. Pick up the phone, write an email, talk. This meshugas of locking yourself up. The guy crossed me, 40 years ago in his life. I'm never going to talk to him again. Well, don't talk. The 40 years, you're an isolated loner somewhere in your...
It's time to talk.
And you know what? If they can't talk, slowly. People have to be taught how to speak also. And also be careful. Sometimes you can have him talk, and once he opens his mouth, you have to be ready to hear things that you are not expecting. So take it all in consideration. I just want to announce about the Tisha B'Av, schedule-wise. So obviously, like we hopefully Mashiach will come, and Motzei Shabbos will have a big kiddush. Sunday morning even a bigger kiddush. But if not, God forbid, so we're going to don't eat, you don't drink. And only at nightfall, which is about, I think, 9:45 or 10 to 10, is when you take off your shoes,